This is Florence, the city where the modern world was born. Here, between narrow streets and sunlit domes, a cultural revolution erupted that would reshape art, science, philosophy, and politics for centuries. In the 15th century, Florence stood at the crossroads of antiquity and innovation. What happened here wasn't simply a flourish of beauty, it was a transformation of how people thought, lived, and imagined the world. Today, we'll walk through the birth of the Renaissance, not as a legend, but as a real human story. To understand Florence's Renaissance, we must first look to its medieval past. Founded as a Roman colony in 59 BCE, Florence remained a relatively modest town for centuries, but by the 13th century it had become one of the richest cities in Europe. Florence was a republic, a city governed not by a king, but by guilds and councils. This gave merchants, bankers, and artisans power and influence rarely seen in feudal Europe. The city's wool and textile industries thrived, and its bankers, like the Bardi and Peruzzi families, lent money to kings and popes. The florin, minted in 1252, became the dominant currency of European trade. But Florence's rise wasn't smooth. Famine struck, political factionalism turned deadly between the Guelphs and Ghibellines, and in 1348, the Black Death killed nearly half the city's population. Out of this hardship, something extraordinary began to stir. By the early 1400s, a new generation of Florentines began to rediscover the ancient world. Scholars like Coluccio Salutati and Leonardo Bruni collected and translated texts from ancient Greece and Rome. Their passion was academic, but also ideological. They believed that the wisdom of the ancients could guide a new, more virtuous society. This movement, later called humanism, valued reason, history, eloquence, and civic responsibility. In place of medieval scholasticism, it offered a vision of humanity as capable, creative, and dignified. Florence's humanists weren't isolated intellectuals. They were secretaries, diplomats, teachers, and their ideas quickly spread into every aspect of Florentine life, from government to art. As humanist ideals flourished, so did a fascination with beauty, especially the beauty of the human form. Few families shaped Florence more than the Medici. In 1434, Cosimo de' Medici, a banker, emerged as the city's most powerful man, not through official title, but through wealth and influence. Cosimo understood that prestige came not only from money, but from culture. He patronized churches, libraries, artists, and philosophers. His grandson, Lorenzo de' Medici, would later earn the title Il Magnifico. Under his rule in the late 15th century, Florence became a magnet for talent. Thanks to Medici patronage, artists like Botticelli, Ghirlandaio, Verrocchio, and a young Michelangelo had the resources to create. Lorenzo supported the Platonic Academy, a group of scholars inspired by ancient Greek philosophy. He corresponded with humanists, sponsored translations, and promoted civic festivals. The Medici didn't create the Renaissance, but they financed it, protected it, and elevated it to a civic ideal. Art in Florence before the Renaissance was religious, symbolic, and flat, but in the early 15th century that began to change, radically. Around 1400, Florentine artists began exploring new ways to depict space and the human form. Sculptor Lorenzo Ghiberti brought elegance and depth to bronze reliefs, while architects like Filippo Brunelleschi studied Roman ruins and rediscovered the principles of linear perspective. Brunelleschi's greatest achievement, the massive dome of Santa Maria del Fiore, rose above the city like a symbol of rebirth. Completed without scaffolding in 1436, it redefined what architecture could accomplish. Masaccio, in painting, introduced lifelike human figures and dramatic use of light. His frescoes in the Brancacci Chapel became a training ground for future masters. What we now call Renaissance art was born, an art rooted in realism, perspective, anatomy, and classical ideals. Florence became a workshop of genius. By the late 15th century, Florence had given rise to some of the greatest artists in history. Sandro Botticelli painted ethereal visions of mythology and beauty. His Birth of Venus captured the fusion of classical and Christian thought. Leonardo da Vinci, born in nearby Vinci, trained in Florence. Here, he began his lifelong exploration of anatomy, nature, and the human soul. Michelangelo Buonarroti, another native son, sculpted the David, not only a symbol of biblical heroism, but of Florentine liberty. Standing over 5 meters tall, carved from a single block of flawed marble, it was a declaration. Human potential could rival the divine. Florence's artists were craftsmen, as well as intellectuals. They studied mathematics, engineering, literature. Their work can be summarized as philosophy in paint and stone. No golden age lasts forever. By the 1490s, Florence was engulfed in turmoil, culminating in the dramatic expulsion of the Medici family from the city's political stage. A fiery preacher named Girolamo Savonarola condemned the city's wealth and art, leading the infamous bonfire of the Vanities. For a moment, it seemed the Renaissance dream might burn away, but the vision of human dignity and potential had already spread far beyond Florence. The Renaissance moved on to Rome, Venice, and Northern Europe. But Florence remained its birthplace. Its legacy endures not only in museums or architecture, but in every society that values knowledge, creativity, and freedom of thought. Florence was never the largest city. It was not the most powerful republic. But for a brief moment in time, it became the beating heart of human achievement. In its churches and piazzas, in marble and fresco, in poetry and philosophy, Florence rediscovered the past, and in doing so, created the modern world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with fellow history lovers. Let me know in the comments which archaeological site you've visited or dream of seeing, and if you'd like to support more videos like this one, consider joining me on Patreon.